President Bola Ahmed Tinubu inaugurates a presidential committee on fiscal policy, tax reforms. Federal government to invest 144.8 billion naira to finance safe schools. ECOWAS imposes stricter financial penalties on Niger's junta. Plus, oil rises as tighter supply offsets China demand concern. The program is Business Express, reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Benny Adams, your guide. Good to have you join us at this time. It is that time we bring you up to speed with happenings in the world of business. I will start by telling you that the federal government, in a proof of commitment to ensuring the safety and well-being of students, has unveiled a funding plan for the Safe Schools Initiative, a project aimed at fortifying educational institutions across the nation. At a press briefing in Abuja, the National Coordinator of Financing Safe Schools in Nigeria, Halima Ilya Ibrahim, says under the recently developed national plan, a total of 144.8 billion naira is to be invested in the project for a period of 4 years. The plan, which aims to cover 50% of the most at-risk public schools within the implementation cycle, is to be funded through annual budgetary provisions from federal, states, local governments, as well as donor agencies.
In 2023 to 2026, with a total investment of 144.8 billion, the plan proposes to 32.5 billion in 2023, 36.98 billion in 2024, and 37.15 billion in 2026. 38.03 billion in 2026, respectively. To this end, the federal government has made a provision of 15 billion in 2023 budget. The plan will focus on achieving the following milestones: building and integrating security resilience host communities in the protection of education.
And following the inauguration of the Presidential Committee on Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, the committee has appealed to Nigerians and other relevant stakeholders to support them to succeed for rapid economic growth. The committee made the appeal while briefing State House correspondents after the inauguration.
Everybody knows that it's one country, it's our nation, and for it to work, we need that coordination. So one of the pillars of the assignment of the committee is the fiscal governance. That fiscal governance also says we have to ensure we have coordination in terms of within the federal government itself, and also horizontally or vertically, I should say, with sub-nationals, particularly state, but also local government.
Paying tax is enlightened self-interest, because that's the only way you can guarantee infrastructure. That's the only way you can guarantee that even the people that work for you in business places have the capacity to live a life that is livable. So on behalf of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria and the private sector, we'd like to pledge that our inclusion in this process is for the good of the country.
We are always here to help in other ways by sharing the experience and knowledge of what's worked in other countries. But in terms of, could not be happier if Nigeria gets to the point where it's generating enough of its own revenues in a way that's actually helping create the space for private investment, for families to flourish, and does not need to come to the World Bank for financing. So one other thing that I thought was really important in how the mandate of this committee was set up is that it's not just about tax and revenues, it's really about inclusive growth, but also about fiscal policy in general which means about the spending side.
The World Trade Organization, WTO, says it has been considering ways to alleviate the difficult socioeconomic conditions that Nigerians are currently going through. Director General of the WTO, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, said this was part of her discussions as she visited President Bola Ahmed Tinubu at the State House. Musbao Danwahab reports.
The World Trade Organization, WTO, is apparently one of the organizations Nigeria would have to look up to with economic realities in the country. Though unofficial, the visit of a boss of a global body was an opportunity President Bola Tinubu would not miss to seek help for the country on a round table.
On trying to look at community and grassroots programs that can be put in place to create jobs for young people, on trying to support women and children who are those who are bearing the brunt of some of the suffering in the country. We talked about how for the longer term we need to look at investment opportunities that Nigeria can seize, including in the pharmaceutical industry.
Meanwhile, as the authority of the ECOWAS heads of state and governments considers the next line of action of the Niger coup following the expiration of the ultimatum, the presidency is maintaining that Nigeria has no isolated stand on the situation apart from the common ground of the regional bloc.
The Nigerian government has acted on the authority provided by the consensus position taken by the bloc itself, by all members of the ECOWAS heads of state, concerning financial sanctions and many others. I can also report that His Excellency President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has ordered an additional slate of financial sanctions through the Central Bank of Nigeria on entities and individuals related to or involved with the military junta in Niger Republic.
The ECOWAS reconvenes again in Abuja for an extraordinary summit on Thursday.
Meanwhile, trans-border trading activities at the Ilela-Niger border in Sokoto State still remain closed as tens of trucks are loaded with cement, food items and textile materials are denied entry at both ends. Last week, Acting Controller General of Customs visited the border to enforce the ECOWAS directive on border closure. The Controller General said the measure is not meant to torture the citizens but to restore stability in Niger Republic after last week's military coup.
We want peace in Niger, but we also want peace all over the sub-region. So this effort is to ensure that democracy is restored so that we can guarantee peace in Niger, in Nigeria, and in the entire sub-region. So we can only trade. Business can only thrive when there is peace.
Friday, August 4th, Nigeria made the decision to close its land borders with Niger in response to the refusal of the military junta to release the detained president of Niger, Mohamed Bazoum. This is as the federal government had previously cut off power supply to Niger just as 2 days earlier as a means to exert pressure on the military junta. These actions have proved to have economic implications at both ends. And to shed more light on this, joining us virtually is Ambassador Joe Keshi. He is Nigeria's former ambassador to the United States of America. Sir, you are welcome to Business Express.
Thank you. Wonderful to be with you.
Okay, Ambassador, sir, like if you saw the visuals we had looking at the customs authority going to the borders to effect the ECOWAS directive to close our borders with Niger Republic. We also understand that Benin Republic is also shut out of Niger. while Niger, on the other hand, had earlier also shut their borders with the likes of Algeria, Libya, and Chad, but have kind of opened up those ones. So, for now, what do you think is the economic impact of all of this? Well, it's like we've lost contact with Ambassador Joe Keshi. When we establish such contacts, we are going to continue the conversation on the economic implications of the Niger coup as well as the sanctions being meted on the country by ECOWAS. And moving on, oil edged higher on Wednesday as a tighter supply rising from output cuts by Saudi Arabia and Russia offset concerns over slow demand from top crude importer China and a report showing a rise in U.S. crude inventories. Saudi Arabia's cabinet said on Tuesday that it reaffirms its support for precautionary measures by the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries and its allies, known as OPEC Plus, to stabilize the market. State media reported that Brent crude futures rose 55 cents to $86.72 a barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude gained 63 cents to $83.55. Both contracts gained nearly $1 the previous day. And still on commodities, gold steadied on Wednesday, buoyed by weakness in the dollar, although caution prevailed in the run-up to U.S. inflation readings that could set the tone for future monetary policy. Let's now take a look at other commodities, how they are trading on the international market. Can I understand we have reestablished contact with Ambassador Joe Keshi? Ambassador, if you're listening and if you're watching and if you're online, okay, I can see you clearly. So, would you haven't seen what has happened in our previous reports? They established closure of the Nigeria-Niger border as well as Benin Republic. Though we also understand that earlier on Niger had closed its borders to Algeria, Libya, and Chad, but they've now opened. There is economic crunch. It's biting harder. Any implications for the sub-region? Any implications for Nigeria? Any implications for Niger?
Yeah, certainly there are implications in any action that you take. And in the case of the issue being discussed, I think we have to understand in the first instance that all over the world, your neighbors are your major trading partners. When you look at a number of countries, particularly in the advanced world, you will see the high volume of transaction between states contiguous to one another. They go into billions on a daily basis. And so when you look at the pictures that have come out from the border between Nigeria and Niger, and you see the line of talks, the long line of talks, it just shows you the impact the sanction, that has been imposed by ECOWAS is causing on both sides of the border. And hopefully that will make the junta, think rationally and well enough to find a way of reaching some accommodation, with ECOWAS.
So with these sanctions and how it's biting on not just neighboring countries, but Niger itself, for us to have enough pressure, for this ECOWAS region to have enough pressure on the junta, for them to re-establish or reinstate democracy, for how long should we be looking at this? Should we expect more sanctions?
Well, I guess we should expect more, but it depends on the type of sanctions that you are imposing on Niger. For example, yesterday, the federal government imposed some financial sanctions, to the central bank. I found that very interesting. And I sincerely hope we are not, copying what others have done. We need to look at our own. For example, I wonder how many, maybe in terms of trade, but if you are talking of individuals, I wonder whether anybody in Niger, particularly those involved in this coup d'etat, whether they bank with Nigeria at all. If they don't bank with Nigeria, and if a lot of Niger businessmen and women are not banking with Nigeria, it therefore means that it will be very difficult for that sanctions to work. So it becomes more cosmetic, but it shows part of the range of sanctions available to ECOWAS. And we must ensure that in taking these measures, it's not just only ECOWAS, and I have emphasized this in a number of interviews. We still have Cameroon, that I do not know whether Cameroon has been adequately consulted and if Cameroon has imposed sanctions on Niger. If Cameroon has not imposed sanctions on Niger, it's almost possible that the Nigerians will be bossing the ECOWAS sanction by conducting their trade and business through Cameroon.
Okay, that being said, let's look at the impacts of some of these sanctions.
All neighboring countries need to be involved. But perhaps the most interesting part of the development is that could be taken. Mostly you have foodstuff, you have cement, you have
textile materials.
So what it now means is that when you take cement, for example, whatever. Look, the foodstuff, for example, is going to cause higher, it's going to increase the crisis on both sides. Foodstuff. In terms of cement, for example, when you look at what's going to happen at the Niger end, cement is going to be very, very expensive if we are the only ones supplying them cement. So it's going to be very expensive in that part of, they say with others. Now, for those who depend on supplies of textiles from Niger, and I find that very interesting, and this is why people have always insisted that the bulk of the smuggling that goes on in this country takes place in that particular, border. If you have so much textiles coming in from that part of the world, so it therefore means that those involved in that trade are not probably going to have their supplies. And if that is not, arrested within the next few weeks or months, then it therefore means that all those involved in textile business, particularly in the north, who are expecting supplies through Niger, they're going to be out of business. So it affects both sides, and this is why
talking about, let me hold your thoughts there, Ambassador Keshi. Talking about the impact,
some stability can be restored in a relationship between Nigeria, Niger, and between Niger and ECOWAS.
Okay, talking about the impact, which you've mentioned some of it, talking about not just Niger, but also from the side of Nigeria and other ECOWAS countries. For us, talking about Nigeria and Benin Republic, we're talking about disruptions in air travels, which is also increasing the cost of travel in such routes when Niger has shut down its airspace. We have a real project,
I can hardly hear you now.
A $2 billion worth real project under construction, as well as a gas pipeline that is under construction. Should we go to sleep with our eyes closed, or should we be worried that this can impact on the progress of these highly beneficial economic ventures? Well, it seems we've lost contact again. Well, the program will continue. The Office of the Accountant General of the Federation is to work with other partners to ensure training of Administrative Staff College of Nigeria to provide requisite capacity development training for Treasury staff. The agreement was reached in Abuja as the Accountant General of the Federation, Dr. Oluwatoyin Madein, received a delegation from the Administrative Staff College of Nigeria, ASCON, led by the Director General Cecilia Gaya. Dr. Madein said capacity building is essential for effective performance and assured that the Office of the Accountant General of the Federation will sustain a deeper collaboration with ASCON regarding capacity building training for its staff. And Africa, as a continent, is blessed with abundant human and mineral resources that must be tapped for the benefit of Africans. This was part of submissions of participants at the ongoing African Bar Association Conference in Pretoria, South Africa. Dele Atumbi of our Judiciary Desk reports that the theme of the conference is building the legal profession in Africa under the African Continental Free Trade Agreement.
Union towards the establishment of African Continental Free Trade Area with the legal instrument guiding the attainment of the single liberalized market in place has been described as one of the best things that has happened on the continent of Africa. The discussion at the 2023 African Bar Association Conference are not only about law, the conference also taking a critical look at the huge benefits of this agreement to the 55 countries on the continent and the rest of the world. When the single market is on stream, participants are of the view that it will lower prices of goods and services as a result of increased competition and lower tariffs. The market for the African continent will equally bring in more exports and access to larger markets due to reduced trade barriers. The African Continental Free Trade Agreement is a pivot for economic growth and development as it is capable of attracting increased foreign direct investment, innovation, and productivity. Continent's ability to get value for money also resonates at the conference.
The emergence of the African Continental Free Trade Area, AFCFTA, in which trading began in January and more specifically in October 2022, represents a historic opportunity for Africa to strengthen immeasurably intra-African trade as a powerful avenue for developing Africa's vast economic and material potential. As the adage goes, there is strength in unity, and for all 54 member states of the African Union, our strength lies with our numbers. Cumulatively, we have a population of 1.3 billion people, the majority of whom are young people. And we are in possession of a collective GDP of some 3 trillion United States dollars, making us collectively the 8th largest economy in the world.
A quick look at global stocks around the world.
Stock markets around the world closed positive this Wednesday. European markets advanced as traders digested China's disinflation and Italy's weakening of a surprise windfall tax on banks. Pan-European Stock 600 index was up 0.9% by late morning, with oil and gas stocks adding 2% to lead gains as almost all sectors traded higher except travel and leisure. Germany's DAX, Britain's FTSE, and CAC 40 of France all posted gains. In Asia, stocks in China and Hong Kong fell Wednesday as China's consumer price slipped into negative territory in July for the first time in 28 months. Mainland Chinese markets were lower, with the Shanghai Composite closing 0.49% down at 3,244.49 and extending its losing streak. U.S. stock futures were higher Wednesday as Wall Street tried to regain its footing following a decline in the previous session. Dow Jones Industrial Average futures rose 0.12%, S&P 500 futures climbed 0.17%, and Nasdaq futures climbed 0.12%. Markets in Africa closed mixed in midweek trade, with Tunisia's Tuna Index and Ghana's GSC Composite Index posting losses of 0.27% and 0.15%.
Well, thank you for being part of this package. Business Express returns tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. Keep a date with us.